Today I'm just going to share a little bit about making up horoscopes with you. It's, I don't want to say it's all done with mirrors, but sometimes it seems that way. This handy dandy book we have here is known as an Ephemeris. There's your cover. It's the only one worth having. And at the moment I'm working on December 2017, so this is the actual full month in the Ephemeris, showing all the planetary positions. Planets are listed along the top here, and their positions down. It also carries moon phases and so on, and all interesting other stuff, ingresses, which we'll use as well. And this here is my handy dandy protractor. When you were at school you probably had one half, but this is the full circle one, which I use to give me the 30 degrees I need for each sign. I'll lay the center point of the protractor in the actual point where the compass went in when I drew the original circles. And from this point I can go over and pick up the actual 30 degree marks. 120, where is it? There it is. Mark these. And you might wonder, well, why do I do it by hand? Well, you know what? I like doing it. I like the art of astrology as well. I don't just always, whilst I use computers to calculate most things, I actually enjoy creating the art and the colours and so on that we use. Oops, is that correct? No. It's that one there. 210, get it right, girl. 240, 270. Each sign is 30 degrees. This is what we're going for. We're going to be drawing the natural wheel. And that's how I go. So I've now got these, the actual sign cusps between the signs, lining up with my little marks there, so I get the correct angle, and we'll draw the line in. So here now we can see I've drawn in all the sign cusps. Just for some information about the size of this circle, the full diameter is around 13. The actual sign piece, which is going to be this bit here, is around 1 centimetre. I then leave about 3 centimetres to actually put the planets' information in here. And this little inner circle is where I actually put the moon's position as it moves throughout the month, because I'm going to list a full month of December on here, but I will do weekly horoscopes and I'll want to know the moon's position. The centre diameter then is around 4.5. It actually just fits quite neatly on the page. That's why it's really done at this size, more than any other reason. In here I will put in any major aspects that's actually important for the whole month. And you'll see some of those a bit later on. Yeah, so there's your basic wheel now. We're calling this the natural wheel, and I'll be placing the sign positions in. So we know that Aries will be on the first position. Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, are you with me? Following along. Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So I will write the signs in the natural wheel. That means that the ascendants at this position, the first sign of the zodiac, which is Aries, always lays in this position, and this is what is called the natural wheel. All of these signs are 30 degrees wide, and that's what we're going to use as our basis. I'm going to start laying out the lines now for the right-hand side of the book, and I'm going to draw those in, and then we'll come back to this. It's clearly, I'm not so sure. I've got now the video on landscape, and hopefully that's the correct way I'm supposed to be going. You can join me in a moment. So here I've started just laying out the right-hand side, the December page, and I've made the top line across there. We've got 2 columns on this side and 2 thin columns on this side. So this first one is actually for the date, which will be the 1st, 2nd, etc. And then the second one will be the day of the week, which is... haven't quite got to that yet. And on this side, my outside column is for the Oriental planet, because that is my thing that interests me more than anything else about astrology, so I always pay attention to that. And then the second column in there was actually going to be when the moon changes signs, and we'll see that now. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to break this whole month up into chunks of 7 days, which is the weeks, because weekly horoscopes start on a Sunday and end on a Monday, and I'm going to be laying that out now, so you can catch up with that in a moment. If we actually go back to our Ephemeris for December, we can see quite clearly that the first day is a Friday and a Saturday, and here in the Ephemeris it's handily broken into weeks for you. If you're doing weekly horoscopes, I mean, you wonder, is there method in the madness, or is it just sheer luck? Okay. So here we're going now. I've got my two left-hand columns in. The first one is the date, December 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is the day of the week. So I've now actually broken the whole month down into blocks of 7, and clearly it doesn't start at it's not the first 7, it's the week. We go from Sunday to Saturday, that's your week. The first day of the week is a Sunday for horoscopes, and that's how it's done. So each week is broken down, and then you see the very last day, which is a Sunday, is the 31st, New Year's Eve actually, and that's the beginning of a whole new week anyway, so that's why that's there. So what we're going to do from this point is we're actually going to go now over to the Ephemeris again, and we will be pulling out all the moon's positions for December and putting them in. All right, and to be quite clear, we're looking at this piece in the Ephemeris. You've got 2 months per page. November's marked in orange for me, December's marked in red. So I know that this red chunk here, which, let me get my camera on it, there we go. So here we have aspects there, but this is the actual column we're going for. This has actually got the moon's ingress, which is what we're looking for, and you can see quite clearly that on the 2nd of December it moved into Gemini. That's what I'm going for, and that's what's going in my second far right column. Let's do that next. So now we have the moon's changing sign, the moon's ingress actually for December, happening on the 2nd. The moon goes into Gemini, and you see there on the 4th it actually goes into Cancer, and on the 6th into Leo. So these are the actual moon changing position throughout the month. And because we know that in the first week, which is what this is the main first week, because that part will actually have gone into in the November reading. The first week for December, we know that the moon is actually in Gemini when we start and Virgo at the end. So when I come back over here, I will go to the Gemini point and mark the first week to start here and to end halfway through Gemini. So this is my first week for the moon's position. We go back over to the second week. The moon is in Virgo and ends in Sagittarius. So coming back here, there's our moon position in Virgo, and we're just going to have it in Sagittarius. There's my second week. So I've got the moon's position week 1, moon's position week 2. Going back over here, this is week 1, which is the first full week, week 2, week 3, and week 4. Sorry about the camera. Week 3 will actually, we see the moon in Sagittarius and moving into Pisces during the end of week 3. So back over here, we've got the moon in Sagittarius and then moving into Pisces at some point in week 3. That is my week 3 slice where the moon is in the zodiac during week 3. It's in this position. Then going back over to week 4, we've got the moon is in Pisces and it ends up in Gemini. So kind of interesting in a way, because clearly it's a 31-day month, so the moon's really started in Gemini and is actually ending in Gemini. And there's something to be said about that as well. This automatically makes me go and check. The next step will be to check on the moon's phases, and we'll write those in here because that's what we need to know as well. New moons, full moons, and the rest of it. Yeah. Back on my ephemeris, we're looking at moons, phases, and eclipses. Well, there's no eclipses this time. So the circle with the white, that's actually the full moon, last quarter new moon. I'll pick up the new moon first. The new moon occurs on the 18th at 26 Sag. So that's the 18th of December. So we'll come back over to the 18th and put the new moon in. Where's my symbol? There we go. There's my symbol for the new moon, which is the black dot. And what did I say that degree was? Let me just check that again. 26 Sag. 26 Sag. I write that in here because I want to know where it is. Not only do I write it in my list for the week, I'll also put it in the Sagittarius position, so we know that the new moon will occur in Sagittarius at around 26, and I'll just put the symbol in here so I can see it when I'm going from the wheel to the list, because the wheel's got the degrees and so on, but the list has got the degrees, but the wheel has the symbols I'm looking for when I'm doing these charts. And again, so I've got the new moon and the full moon in. I've listed the new moon, I've listed the full moon. I'm about to take the last quarter at 18 Virgo, and I'm going to put that right over here, 18 Virgo, just so I know where it is and I can see it. And further down here we have the first quarter on the 26th, that's at 4 Aries. So we want the first quarter moon at 4 Aries, and that will be over here in the Aries position, and I'll draw the first quarter there. Interesting. First quarter, full moon, last quarter, new moon. You can actually see the lunar cycle there, and we can see in which weeks these things are actually now occurring. So there we have it. So we've got the moon's sign and the actual main quarters. I don't go down to the other phases of gibbous and disseminating. It's a little bit too much, but if I need to, I will double check that. So there we have it. So far, so good. Now we're actually going to be looking at filling in the last column over here. This will be the Oriental planet position, or the planet that's in the position of the Oriental planet for the month of December. So what I have here with Astro Gold, I've actually got a chart set up here for December the 1st. Although it says Vancouver, which is where I am, why wouldn't it? I've got it set to, again, the natural wheel. So Aries is here, Taurus is here, and this remains. So what we are looking for is the Oriental planet is the one that rises ahead of the Sun. So already on this chart, it's going to be the Venus right there. It's clockwise from the Sun. So Venus will be in the first position, and that will go on December 1 as Venus. Now clearly, as we step the chart forward by tapping here one day, all we are looking for is keeping an eye on the Venus and seeing if any other planet takes the Oriental position, because then we need to know. And of course it will. One just has to be paid. There we are. Right there, Mercury's moved into position, and that's on December the 13th. We're now looking here. So on December the 13th, in our list, we're going to find December the 13th, which is the middle of the Wednesday, and that's actually going to be Mercury. So we don't need to write every single one in for Venus, because we know Venus was Oriental from that time all the way down to the change of Mercury. Just going back to keeping an eye on things, because clearly, and I'm tapping forward one day at a time here, we can see that this is, there Venus comes back into position because Mercury's moved off, and that's December 15. So by this point we've got, I'm over here, follow me, Venus for the 15th. So it's getting tight. What's going to happen next? Some of you may already know, but of course we have to keep an eye on this. And here's the moon coming through. Interestingly, so we do have the moon Oriental on the 17th of December. Not every month do you actually get the moon Oriental. Sometimes it becomes Oriental for a blip, but it's not at the rising position, and you always want the rising Oriental planet, because the Oriental planet will change signs during the course of the day anyway. So we know that this is that. I keep moving forward now, back to Venus. The moon only had it for one day, and then we're actually back to Venus. So in a way, I don't want to say that that weakens the moon, but when the moon only has one day of being Oriental in a month, it doesn't have much of a say, although still by a long chalk, it's got a lot more to say about the Oriental position than the other planets that haven't had a look in yet. So far, we've only got Venus and Mercury, the moon for one day, and we're back to Venus. And this is typically the case because with Oriental planets, as you know, don't you, that Mercury is Oriental for 30% of the time, Venus 25%, which is over 50%, and so the other planets really don't get a look in. So still keeping Venus at this Oriental planet position. Sorry, I'm hoping you got a good view of that. Venus may, oh, there's Saturn, sorry, I need to go back. Saturn became Oriental on December 22 as the Sun came up to the conjunction. So this is what we're going for. December 22, let me get that in my thingy, so that's the Friday, and that is Saturn. So this will be the first time, probably this year, because we're into December already, that Saturn's had the Oriental position. So that really is kind of interesting. I'll keep moving that forward now and see if Saturn can hold its position for the rest of the year. No, Venus is still taking position there because Venus is moving forward. So on the 26th, which is of course Boxing Day for those of you who pay attention to these things, we've once more got Venus, so Venus really is dominating this time. So that's the Tuesday, that's the 26th, the day after Christmas, and there's Venus now in the Oriental position. So Saturn, I'm going to fill these in now because it so rarely happens. Saturn will actually be Oriental 4 days only in December. I mean, we're not quite there yet because you never know. So you've always got to look. You've got to look and you've got to step the chart forward 1 day at a time, which is what I'm doing here. And Venus remains the position right up until December the 31st. So again, that's Venus. So she's taking the Oriental position for the rest of the month. And we'll note that in our side on the journal. Okay, great. Okay, so there we have it. We've actually got our weekly horoscope form set up for 1 month of December. So this can be used for a month. We've got the date, we've got the date, the day. We have our lunar phases. We know which week we're dealing with. We also have the moon changing signs. And this is the Oriental planet here, which is more detailed at the bottom just because of the changes. So there we have it. And then moving this over, when we go over to the actual diagram on this side, at this point I only have the moon positions in because I'm interested in that at the moment, and the weeks that for each moon. These are the 4 weeks of December, the position of the moon. So now we're going to add a little bit of colour, and I'll start to do that and then we'll come back to it. Just quickly, what I've done here is, because Venus in my charts is always in pink because it's a girl planet, where I've got Venus prominent somewhere, I colour it in pink so I can see as I look down this side here that the Venus Oriental days are actually now highlighted in pink. And I will go back and I'll pick up the Mercury will be going into green, the moon remains white or even grey, and Saturn is actually a purple, so that's always an interesting thing. And I'll be picking those things up as well. That's just a bit of an idea how colour can help you see what you're doing when you're looking at these charts. The next thing we're actually going to be looking at is when the actual planets change position, and we'll be going back to the Ephemeris for that one. Let me get that out. Okay, so we've gone back to the Astrologer's Bible, which is of course your Ephemeris. Every astrologer should have one. If you don't own one, go out and get one immediately. So what we're looking at here is we've got 2 months on a page, November, December. We're concentrating on December today. That's what we're doing. We're preparing a horoscope sheet in our notebook to work with the movements for December. So what's the thing with colour? I do these colouring in because that's how I like to do it. For myself, the December is going to be red anyway. November would have been my orange month. It's just how I do it. In your Ephemeris, you've actually got all the planets are listed here. And when they change signs, like when the Sun goes from Sagittarius into Capricorn, I highlight that in yellow because the Sun is changing sign. It's a solar ingress. We want to know about it. In this Ephemeris here, of course, it's on the 22nd. Sometime it could be the 21st. It doesn't really matter. That's just a highlight there for me to know this. But specifically, to get the exact date, you go down to the little column here that says planetary ingresses, excluding moon. We're looking for the red section, which is this one for December. There's our dates telling us of all the planetary ingresses for December. I'm sorry, can you see that? So what we have is Venus enters Sagittarius on the 1st, Mars enters Scorpio on the 9th, Saturn enters Capricorn on the 21st. This is huge news for anyone who's into astrology. You're going to read a lot more about that. The Sun will be going into Capricorn on the 21st, although up here in the drawing it actually gives me the date on the 22nd. You always double check that. And Venus will be entering Capricorn on the 25th. So these 5 planetary ingresses I'm now going to write into our right-hand side panel. So I'll get on and do that. So here we are. We said Venus was entering Sagittarius on the 1st. It's written there in my list in pink because it's Venus. And I will also come over to my little chart over here and put the Venus into, Venus, which is starting the month off in Scorpio, is going to enter Sagittarius. But not only that, it's actually also later on still going to go into Capricorn. Venus enters Sagittarius on the 1st, and then Venus again enters Capricorn on the 25th, Christmas Day. So that's why I've actually drawn that Venus will be crossing during the course of December. Venus will be going all this way. I will then colour this in pink because I like to see what I'm doing, and it all makes sense at the end. There we go. So I'm going to be working on these other planetary positions. Mars enters Scorpio on the 9th, therefore it is in Libra, which isn't well placed. It's moving into its own sign. We're pleased about this. Mars is in Libra at the beginning of the month and will enter Scorpio during the course of the month. That again will be marked in red when I get round to it. Here's Saturn entering Capricorn on the 20th, going home. It's a big deal. Saturn is going into Capricorn for the first time in 30 years. That's hugely important. The colour I use for Saturn is purple. So I make a note of that. It's not often one of the big planets will actually change signs, as it's noted here in purple as well. It's easier to see. Your brain works that way with colours as well. So we have the Sun going into Capricorn on the 21st, because we've double checked in the Ephemeris, we know that that's the case. So let me get the correct pen for a start, that would help. So we're going to put the Sun going into Capricorn as well from Sagittarius. There it is, into Capricorn. I mean, we can see by the Ephemeris that these two are changing signs on the same day. And once we actually start to look at the chart, it's quite clear that as the Sun catches up with Saturn, they both move into Capricorn. So this is like giving a total double whammy to that Saturn ingress anyway. And there's so much more to be said about that. It's incredibly interesting. All right. And there we have. Oh, let's do Mars in red. Handy dandy ready. Mars is the red planet, colour it in red, keep it simple. And there it is. So this is what you actually see, that in your wheel, these are the ingresses we've picked up so far. Now from here, of course, we haven't got all the planets. I do have the moon's positions here, but what I will do now is go and pick up all the other planets that haven't moved. One of them being Mercury, and one wonders, where is it? Well, of course, you go back over to the Ephemeris, and darn if it isn't retrograding. Yeah, let's have a look at that. So here we are now looking at the Mercury. Where am I? Get my camera, I beg your pardon. Mercury's here. It's actually going to go retrograde on the 3rd. We can see it as the greyed out bit at 29. It almost got out of Sagittarius, but it didn't quite make it. All the way back to 13 degrees Sagittarius, and then it will go direct again. Retrograde, direct. It's pretty straightforward. How I mention that on here is that Mercury is in Sagittarius at the start of the month. I will then do one of these little forwards and a little back, because then I know it's going retrograde. Do you see that? We know that Mercury is going to be retrograding, but within the sign of Sagittarius. It's not retrograding back over a sign cusp. Always an interesting thing. And just by the way, when Mercury's in Sagittarius, it's in detriment. Anyway, it's not well placed. When it's going to be in that retrograde period, that's going to be like a double whammy, not good place for Mercury. So many things need to be considered during that time, and we'd certainly discuss those during the course of a horoscope reading. So that's interesting there. And again, Mercury, because it's green, let me get my lovely green out there, and I would definitely colour this bit in green because this is Mercury going retrograde, remaining in Sagittarius, so still bringing us quite a lot of flavour of Sagittarius there. Okay, there's Mercury. Continuing on now, putting in the other planets in there. Anyone who knows their salt knows that Pluto is in Capricorn and is going nowhere. We can quite clearly place Pluto in Capricorn. We also have Chiron and Neptune in Pisces. I'll put those in there, no problem. Everybody who's an astrologer knows that Uranus is in Aries at the moment. And what else have I got? I think I've got them all. Yeah, there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the moon. Perfect. So I've got all the planets there. I will just colour these in as well. And then I'm going to talk to you about the sign colouring as well. Interesting, when you colour in the signs, there are 3 fire planets and they take the primary colours. So Mars is always red, Aries is always red, Leo is always yellow, Sagittarius is always blue because these are the 3 primary colours, red, yellow and blue, and they are designated to the fire signs. This is how the colour wheel is going to develop here. And I can't seem to find my red, where is it? There we go. So we've got yellow for Leo, blue for Sagittarius and red for Aries. And of course I'll come back later and make this a far neater thing in the magic of time, and you'll see what I've done there. But the point is that when you've got to this stage where you've got your 3 fire signs, Aries, Leo and Sagittarius, marked in blue, we then know that they are the primary colours, so then we know that the secondary colours, which are orange, green and purple, will go for the air signs, which are the ones in between. So Gemini will be coloured in orange. I can come back and do this in great detail at some point. And then over here, Libra, the midpoint between yellow and blue is green. So Libra is always green, which is quite an interesting, there's a lot to this colour business and sign correlation, that Libras actually enjoy green and all the rest of it. And then over here, between the difference between Sagittarius and Aries, the midpoint will actually be purple, and that will be Aquarius. So these would be the secondary colours. So the air signs take the secondary colours, the fire signs take the primary colours, and that's kind of how you do. And of course, if you've got enough crayons from here on in, these would then be tertiary colours. There would be 6 tertiary colours, and between red and orange you've got that like tangerine shade. Between orange and yellow you've got a much lighter, more of a taupey looking orange. The difference for Virgo between yellow and green is that lime green you often get, or an acid green. And then between Libra and Sagittarius, this is what I would call turquoise, would go in there for Scorpio. And then between Sagittarius and Aquarius, between the blue and the purple, you've got that purpley blue, clearly a bluey purple, whatever you want to call it. And then Pisces tends to be more of a fuchsia because it's the red and the purple coming together. So you could get a shocking pink or a fuchsia going in there. Depends how many crayons you have. I happen to have the sort of colour I'm talking about for Pisces, and that would go in there. So that the signs, the 12 signs, will actually lay on the colour wheel, and there is some meaning in that as well. It's a way to make sure that you can visually, the chart's making sense. You've got the hot impulse, you've got the creative yellow, and you've got the visionary blue, and it all hinges from there. It all starts, the Aries is red, and if you can remember that, you'll absolutely know where the colours go in the colour wheel on the astrology chart. So I'm going to finish colouring these in, and we'll get back to you in a moment. So there we have it. Basically, we've got everything coloured in now, give or take. Clearly, I could do with some other colours as well, but still. And I've got the majority of what the action is. The action for December is all happening over here. A little bit of Mars going, but it really is the push from mutable fire into cardinal earth, and we'll explore that further. So this is how we have it. The moon is laid out there. And in my listing, I've got my 4 things. The only other thing I will add in here is the Mercury retrograde cycle. And there we have it. So that's how I set up my astrology journal, my Moleskine astrology journal, so I can actually do horoscopes. I've got 1 page, a double page, and this is how I like to do most of my journal. I've got the writing on the right-hand side and the picture that goes with it on the left. It's a bit like when we were kids at school, but it still works. It appeals to the left and the right side of your brain, and this makes so much more sense. And here we are now. And what I've done now is I've actually placed in the Mercury position, the Mercury station retrograde, because during December 2017, Mercury is going retrograde. It turns retrograde at 29 Sag, and I've drawn that through the actual, this is the retrograde period, going back to 13 degrees when Mercury stations direct on the 23rd. So what this means is that we've actually now got the all in green, the Mercury piece, so I can see quite clearly that it's fully well in retrograde during virtually those 3 weeks in the middle of December. Interestingly enough, just as a by the by, that when we get to this point of Mercury being Oriental as well, we do know that it's retrograde. So that's kind of interesting as well. And we'll look at more into that as later on as an astrologer. Coming back over now to the actual chart, where I've got my images in, I've got the Mercury here in green. Oh, I know it's going to be retrograding in Sagittarius. I don't need to do the exact amount, the exact degrees and so on. This is more of a diagrammatical reminder for me that Mercury is going to retrograde, whereas we can see Saturn and the Sun clearly just go from Sagittarius straight into Capricorn, and Venus here is going all the way through Sagittarius during the course of December. So that's where I've added now the Mercury piece in. I've also finalised and put in all the other planets, and the whole thing's just about there. I've finished the colouring in, yeah, and maybe I could do with some other shades, but that's the whole idea. So again, going back to the fact that Aries is the fire sign, the first one is the red, the second fire sign is Leo, and that takes the yellow, and then Sagittarius takes the blue. Once you've got your 3 primary colours in, you can work out the colours for the wheel, and it's a very interesting thing to do that. So as a roundup, that's how I actually do, how I lay out everything I'm going to use when I'm going to prepare myself to write horoscopes for a month and a week, because I do like to do it there. I do one for each month, and of course each month is different, and I find it's a way to help me both with the data and the visualization. Of course, if I've got any real questions or about specifics, I will always go back to the Ephemeris and see what's going on there. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.